Dr. Paul Green arrived at the hospital at 6 in the morning, expecting to find his patient in critical condition or worse. Instead, he discovered something that defied his understanding of medicine. Keisha's vital signs had stabilized overnight in ways that seemed impossible. Her blood pressure had normalized and her heart rate showed strength that should not exist after such massive trauma. Green ordered immediate scans to check for internal bleeding. The results left him staring at the monitor in confusion. The bullet wounds were closing, not healing in the normal sense but actually regenerating tissue at a rate Green had never witnessed in his career. The damaged organs showed repair that would typically take weeks or months happening in mere hours. Green called in his colleague Dr. Lisa Park to review the scans. Park initially thought there had been a computer error. She ordered new scans using different equipment. The results were identical. Both doctors stood in silence trying to comprehend what they were seeing. Green made the decision to draw blood samples for analysis. Something in Keisha's cellular structure was causing this accelerated healing and he needed to understand it. The blood work came back with readings that made no sense. Her cells contained DNA sequences that did not match any known human genetic markers. The lab technician who processed the samples thought the equipment was malfunctioning. Green ran the tests again personally. The strange sequences remained consistent across all samples. In her hospital bed, Keisha began to wake. The pain that had consumed her entire being was fading to a dull ache. She tried to remember what had happened, but her memories were fragmented. The traffic stop, the gunshots, the blood. She moved her hand to her chest, expecting to feel bandages and wound dressings. Instead, her fingers touched skin that felt tender but intact. Confusion washed over her. She tried to sit up, but nurses rushed in to keep her lying down. Keisha's mother entered the room with tears streaming down her face. She had been told her daughter might not survive the night. Now Keisha was awake and alert and asking for water. The relief was overwhelming. Green appeared in the doorway and asked to speak with Keisha privately. Her mother reluctantly left the room. Green pulled up a chair beside the bed and his expression was serious. He told Keisha that her recovery was medically impossible. Her body was healing itself in ways that contradicted everything he knew about human biology. The news confused Keisha more than it frightened her. She asked Green what he meant. He showed her the scans from when she first arrived compared to scans taken just hours ago. The difference was startling even to her untrained eyes. Wounds that should have killed her were nearly gone. Green admitted he had no explanation. He asked if she had any medical conditions or treatments he should know about. Keisha told him she had always been healthy and never needed serious medical care. That answer only deepened the mystery. Outside the hospital, the media had caught wind that something unusual was happening. A lab technician had mentioned the strange test results to a friend who worked for a local news station. Reporters began making calls trying to confirm the story. By noon, social media was buzzing with rumors that Keisha Williams had made a miraculous recovery. Some people called it divine intervention. Others suspected a cover-up. The conspiracy theories began almost immediately. In the Pentagon Situation Room, General Cole watched the news coverage with growing concern. His worst fears were materializing. Keisha's enhanced healing had activated exactly as the Genesis protocol designers had predicted. The trauma of near death had triggered the dormant alien DNA in her system. Now her body was demonstrating capabilities that would raise questions the government was not prepared to answer. Cole knew he had limited time before the situation spiraled beyond control. Captain Brooks entered the room with an urgent report. Medical staff at Detroit Memorial had begun sharing information about Keisha's unusual recovery with colleagues. The story was spreading through the medical community. Scientists and researchers were becoming interested in studying her case. Brooks recommended immediate extraction before more people learned about the anomalies. Cole agreed but recognized the complications. Removing Keisha from the hospital would confirm that something extraordinary was happening and draw even more attention. Intelligence analyst Walsh proposed an alternative approach. Instead of extracting Keisha, they could send in their own medical team to examine her under the guise of federal investigators interested in the shooting case. This would allow them to control the flow of information while determining how much civilian doctors had discovered. Cole approved the plan and ordered a team assembled within the hour. They would need to move quickly before the media turned the story into a national sensation. Across the country, other Genesis protocol subjects began receiving coded messages. The network of enhanced humans had remained dormant for decades, waiting for activation orders. Now something had changed. Subject 1847 had been compromised. The messages instructed them to maintain cover and await further instructions. Among those who received the alerts was Danny White, a firefighter in Seattle who had always wondered why he was stronger and faster than his colleagues. He read the message 3 times, trying to understand its meaning. Back at Detroit Memorial, Keisha was dealing with a stream of visitors. Her children arrived with their grandmother and climbed onto her bed, careful not to hurt her. They were too young to understand the miracle of her recovery. They just wanted their mother back. Keisha held them close and felt tears on her cheeks. Whatever was happening to her body, she was grateful to be alive. The thought of leaving her children without a mother had been unbearable. Attorney Marcus Turner arrived at the hospital that afternoon. He had taken on Keisha's case pro bono after seeing the body camera footage. Turner specialized in police misconduct cases and had built a reputation for winning justice for victims of excessive force. He introduced himself to Keisha and her family and explained that he wanted to represent them in legal action against the police department. Keisha's mother immediately agreed. Turner spent an hour taking notes and reviewing medical records. Something in those records caught Turner's attention. The cellular analysis reports contained terminology he did not recognize. The genetic markers mentioned in the lab results seemed unusual. Turner had worked with medical experts on previous cases and knew enough to recognize when something was abnormal. He asked Dr. Green about the strange findings. Green hesitated before admitting that Keisha's biology showed characteristics he could not explain. Turner's instincts told him there was more to this story than a simple case of police violence. As evening fell, General Cole made his most difficult decision. He could not contain this situation through normal channels. Too many people had seen the evidence of Keisha's enhanced healing. Medical professionals were already discussing her case and sharing theories. The story would break publicly within days, if not hours. Cole needed to get ahead of the narrative before conspiracy theories took over. He picked up the phone and requested an immediate meeting with the president. It was time to reveal the Genesis protocol to the highest level of government. Keisha lay in her hospital bed that night, unable to sleep. Her body felt different, not just healed but changed in some fundamental way. She could hear conversations from rooms down the hall with perfect clarity. Her vision seemed sharper even in the dim lighting. When she closed her eyes, she sensed the presence of other people in the building, as if she could feel their thoughts brushing against her mind. Fear crept through her chest. What was happening to her? What had she become? The questions haunted her as she stared at the ceiling, waiting for answers that seemed impossibly far away. President Patricia Caldwell sat in the Oval Office reviewing morning briefings when her chief of staff informed her that General Raymond Cole was requesting an emergency meeting. The urgency in his voice made her clear her schedule immediately. Cole arrived 30 minutes later, accompanied by the Director of National Intelligence, Victor Santos. The expressions on their faces told Caldwell this was not a routine security matter. Cole began with an apology. He explained that he was about to brief her on a classified program that had been kept above presidential clearance for 7 decades. Caldwell felt anger rising in her chest. She was the commander-in-chief, and the idea that any program could exist beyond her authority violated everything she understood about government oversight. Santos interjected that previous presidents had made the decision to keep Genesis protocol compartmentalized to protect against potential security breaches. Caldwell told them to continue but made clear she would have words about this chain of command later. The briefing took 2 hours. Cole walked Caldwell through the entire history of the Genesis protocol, starting with the 1952 probe crash in Montana. He showed her classified photographs of the recovered craft and the biological samples found inside. Scientists had discovered that the alien genetic material could be spliced with human DNA to create enhanced individuals. The program began under President Eisenhower as a defense initiative. Over decades, it had grown to include approximately 2,000 enhanced humans living throughout American society. Caldwell listened with growing disbelief. These enhanced people had been placed as sleeper agents without their knowledge. They possessed abilities ranging from accelerated healing to increased cognitive function. Most importantly, they carried genetic markers that could potentially allow communication with the alien species that had sent the original probe. The entire program was designed as humanity's insurance policy against extraterrestrial contact. Caldwell asked why she was being told this now. Cole explained that one of the enhanced subjects had been shot by police in Detroit, and her abilities had been exposed to civilian medical staff. The president demanded to know more about Keisha Williams. Cole provided her complete file, including the circumstances of her enhancement as an infant. Keisha had no knowledge of what had been done to her. She had lived a normal life as a nurse and mother. The shooting had triggered her dormant abilities, and now doctors were asking questions nobody was prepared to answer. Caldwell felt sick thinking about the ethical implications. Children had been experimented on without informed consent. People had been turned into unknowing test subjects for a program they never agreed to join. Santos explained the current crisis. Medical professionals at Detroit Memorial Hospital had documented Keisha's impossible healing. Attorney Marcus Turner had obtained her medical records and was asking difficult questions. The story was already leaking to journalists. Within days, the existence of enhanced humans would become public knowledge unless the government acted decisively. Santos recommended extracting Keisha and creating a cover story about experimental medical treatment. Caldwell rejected that approach immediately. She would not compound decades of lies with more deception. Captain Nicole Brooks was brought into the meeting to provide operational details. She explained that Genesis protocol subjects were distributed throughout the country in various professions. Many served in positions of public trust, including law enforcement, medicine, and education. All of them remained unaware of their true nature until activation protocols were triggered. Brooks admitted that some subjects had shown signs of using their enhanced abilities unconsciously over the years. A few had been involved in incidents that raised suspicions, but those situations had been contained through careful intervention. Caldwell asked the question that terrified her most. What happened if other nations discovered that America had created genetically enhanced humans? Santos acknowledged this was a serious concern. International law prohibited human genetic modification, and the revelation could trigger diplomatic incidents or worse. China and Russia would demand access to the alien technology. Allies would feel betrayed by the secrecy. The entire global order could destabilize if the information was not managed carefully. The president spent an hour alone in the Oval Office after the briefing. She thought about her oath to protect and defend the Constitution. The Genesis Protocol violated so many principles she had dedicated her life to upholding. Yet she also recognized that shutting down the program now might waste humanity's best preparation for extraterrestrial contact. The moral calculus was impossibly complex. She called her advisors back and told them her decision. There would be no cover-up and no extraction. Keisha Williams deserved to know the truth about herself. The American people deserved to know what their government had done. Cole protested that disclosure would cause mass panic. People would fear the enhanced humans living among them. Religious groups would declare the program an abomination. Scientists would demand access to alien technology that might be dangerous. Caldwell understood these risks but remained firm. Democracy required transparency even when transparency was painful. She ordered Cole to go to Detroit and tell Keisha everything. Then they would begin planning for public disclosure. In Detroit, Marcus Turner had spent the day investigating. He brought Keisha's medical records to an investigative journalist named Sophie Martinez, who had covered police misconduct cases for years. Martinez had contacts throughout the medical community and promised to help him understand the unusual findings. They met at a coffee shop and spread the documents across a table. Martinez looked at the cellular analysis reports and her eyes widened. She had once covered a story about genetic research and recognized that some of the DNA sequences in Keisha's blood did not match known human genes. Martinez asked Turner if he understood the implications of what he was showing her. Turner admitted he did not have the medical expertise to fully interpret the data. Martinez explained that if these reports were accurate, Keisha Williams was not entirely human. Her DNA contained sequences that did not exist in nature. Someone had modified her genetic code. Turner felt the room spinning. He had taken on what he thought was a straightforward case of police violence. Now he was looking at evidence of something far stranger. The two decided to consult with Dr. Helen Foster, a geneticist at the University of Michigan. Foster agreed to meet them that evening. She examined the medical records and ran her own analysis on the DNA sequences. Her conclusion matched Martinez's assessment. The genetic markers were not from any terrestrial source. Foster was careful to note that she could not definitively prove alien origin. but the sequences showed characteristics consistent with non-human biology. She asked where this sample had come from. Turner told her about Keisha and the shooting. Foster made copies of everything before Turner could stop her. She explained that this discovery was too important to keep quiet. If someone was creating genetically modified humans, the scientific community needed to know. Turner tried to argue about patient privacy, but Foster would not be swayed. She promised to be discreet, but intended to share the findings with trusted colleagues. Turner and Martinez left her office knowing they had lost control of the information. The story would break soon whether they wanted it to or not. General Cole arrived at Detroit Memorial Hospital the next morning. He used his security clearance to clear the floor where Keisha was staying. Military police took positions outside her room. Cole entered alone and found Keisha sitting up in bed looking healthier than any shooting victim should. She looked at him with suspicion and demanded to know who he was. Cole introduced himself and asked if they could speak privately. Keisha agreed but insisted her mother could stay. Cole reluctantly accepted. He began by telling Keisha that everything she knew about herself was partially true and partially false. She was who she thought she was, but she was also something more. Cole explained the Genesis protocol as gently as he could. He described the alien probe and the genetic enhancement and the program that had shaped her life before she could remember. Keisha listened in stunned silence. Her mother began crying. Cole showed them classified documents proving his claims. He showed photographs of Keisha as an infant in a laboratory. He showed the scientific reports detailing her enhancement. Keisha felt her world collapsing. She asked about her parents and whether they knew. Cole explained that her legal parents had been program handlers selected to raise her in a normal environment. They had known what she was but were sworn to secrecy. Keisha's mother grabbed her hand and told her that none of this changed who she was. Keisha pulled away. Everything about her identity felt like a lie. Cole tried to provide comfort, but his words rang hollow. He told Keisha she was part of something important that could save humanity if extraterrestrial contact ever occurred. Keisha told him she never asked to be part of anything. She just wanted to be normal. Sophie Martinez sat at her desk staring at the article she had just finished writing. Her career as an investigative journalist had prepared her for many things, but not for this. The evidence was overwhelming. Keisha Williams had DNA sequences in her cells that could not have evolved naturally on Earth. Someone had deliberately modified her genetic code. The question was who and why. Martinez had reached out to 5 geneticists, and all of them confirmed that the samples showed signs of artificial enhancement using non-terrestrial biological material. Dr. Helen Foster had been unable to keep the information confidential as she promised Marcus Turner. Within 3 days of examining Keisha's medical records, she had shared the findings with colleagues in the genetics department at Michigan. Those scientists contacted peers at other universities. The academic community was buzzing with speculation. Some researchers dismissed the data as contaminated samples or equipment errors. Others recognized they were looking at something revolutionary. By the end of the week, dozens of scientists were discussing the case on private forums. Martinez decided she could not sit on the story any longer. She posted her article online at midnight on a Friday. Within an hour, it had been shared 10,000 times. By morning, the article had gone viral across every social media platform. People who normally ignored news stories were reading about Keisha Williams and her impossible DNA. The conspiracy theory communities exploded with activity. Forums filled with posts claiming this proved everything from secret government experiments to alien abductions. Mainstream media outlets were forced to cover the story because their audiences were already talking about it. The White House press office received hundreds of calls demanding comment on the article. Press Secretary Andrew Clark initially tried to dismiss the story as unverified speculation. That approach failed within hours. Too many credible scientists were confirming the DNA analysis. Clark scheduled an emergency meeting with President Caldwell. She told him to stop trying to deny the story. They needed to get ahead of this narrative before it spiraled into mass panic. Caldwell made the decision to address the nation that evening. General Cole received word of the president's intention to make a disclosure speech. He contacted Captain Brooks and told her to prepare for the worst-case scenario. Once the truth was public, there would be no containing the fallout. Brooks activated emergency protocols and sent coded messages to all Genesis protocol handlers. They needed to prepare their enhanced subjects for what was coming. Some of the messages reached their targets. Others were intercepted by subjects who had no handlers because they were second-generation enhanced individuals born to first-generation parents. President Caldwell spent the afternoon working on her speech with her closest advisors. She knew that her words would be studied and analyzed for generations. This was a moment that would define her presidency and possibly define how humanity understood itself. She wrote multiple drafts trying to find the right balance between honesty and reassurance. The American people deserved the truth, but they also needed to be told that truth in a way that would not cause widespread fear. At 8:00 that evening, President Caldwell sat at the resolute desk in the Oval Office with cameras pointed at her face. The major networks had cleared their schedules for this address. International news organizations were preparing to broadcast the speech with live translation. Caldwell took a deep breath and began speaking. She explained that she was about to reveal information that had been classified above presidential clearance for 7 decades. She told the American people about the 1952 probe crash and the alien genetic material that had been recovered. Caldwell described the Genesis protocol in detail. She explained how scientists had learned to integrate alien DNA with human genetics. She revealed that approximately 2,000 Americans had been enhanced through this program. Most importantly, she emphasized that these enhanced individuals were still human beings and still American citizens. They had committed no crimes. They deserved protection and respect. Caldwell admitted that the program raised profound ethical questions about consent and government overreach. She promised a full investigation and public hearings. The president addressed Keisha Williams directly. She acknowledged that Keisha had been thrust into this situation through tragedy and violence. Caldwell praised her strength and her service as a nurse. She made clear that Keisha was a victim, not a threat. The shooting that nearly killed her was unjustified regardless of her genetic status. Caldwell announced that the Department of Justice would prosecute Officer Derek Morrison to the fullest extent of the law. She also promised that enhanced humans would receive full legal protections as a vulnerable minority group. The speech lasted 20 minutes. When Caldwell finished speaking, she sat in silence for a moment before the cameras turned off. She had just changed the world in ways nobody could fully predict. Within seconds, social media exploded with reactions. Some people expressed terror at the idea of genetically modified humans living among them. Others felt excitement about the confirmation of alien life. Religious leaders began issuing statements about the theological implications. Scientists demanded access to the alien technology and the enhanced subjects for study. In Detroit, Keisha watched the speech from her hospital room surrounded by her family. She felt a strange mix of validation and violation. The president had told her story to the entire world without asking her permission. Now everyone knew what she was. Keisha's mother held her hand and told her they would get through this together. Keisha was not sure she believed that. She looked at her children sleeping on the couch and wondered how this revelation would affect their lives. Would people fear them because of their mother's genetics? Would they face discrimination for something they had no control over? Marcus Turner sat in his office watching the news coverage of the president's speech. His straightforward police misconduct case had become something unprecedented. He realized that Keisha would need legal representation, not just for the shooting, but for the avalanche of consequences that would follow this disclosure. Turner began researching civil rights law related to genetic discrimination. He found very little precedent because this situation had never existed before. He would be arguing cases that would establish entirely new areas of law. Danny White stood in his Seattle apartment staring at his phone. The coded message he had received days earlier now made sense. He was one of the enhanced humans the president had described. The strange abilities he had always possessed finally had an explanation. Danny felt relief mixed with confusion. He had spent his whole life thinking he was somehow broken or different. Now he knew why. He picked up his phone and called his parents. They needed to have a conversation they should have had years ago. Across America, 2,000 enhanced individuals were dealing with the revelation in different ways. Some felt betrayed by the government that had experimented on them. Others felt grateful for abilities that had helped them succeed in life. Many experienced complex emotions that could not be easily categorized. They were human, but also something more. They were American, but also products of alien biology. Their identities had been fundamentally redefined in a matter of minutes. Dr. Helen Foster watched the news coverage from her laboratory at Michigan. She felt vindicated for sharing the information, but also worried about the consequences. Scientists around the world would now be demanding access to enhanced subjects for research. Foster knew that many of those scientists would see the enhanced humans as specimens rather than people. She decided to reach out to Keisha and offer her expertise in navigating the medical and scientific attention that would follow. Officer Derek Morrison sat in a safe house watching the president's speech with 2 police guards assigned to protect him. His life had become a nightmare. He had shot someone who turned out to be a genetically enhanced human. Morrison had no way of knowing that when he pulled the trigger, but now people were calling him a murderer and a bigot. The truth was he had been scared and poorly trained. He had made a terrible mistake that had spiraled into a national crisis. Morrison wondered if he would ever have a normal life again. International reaction to the president's speech came quickly. The United Nations called an emergency session to discuss the implications of America's genetic enhancement program. China issued a statement demanding that all research be shared internationally. Russia claimed they had suspected such a program existed for years. European allies expressed concern about being kept in the dark about such a significant development. The global order that had existed for decades was suddenly unstable. Religious leaders worldwide struggled to address the theological questions raised by the revelation. The Pope issued a statement acknowledging that enhanced humans possessed immortal souls like all people. Several Protestant denominations declared the Genesis Protocol a violation of divine law. Islamic scholars debated whether the integration of alien DNA constituted a fundamental change in human nature. Jewish rabbis discussed the implications for identity and covenant. Every faith tradition had to grapple with questions about what it meant to be human in a universe where humanity could be technologically altered. Congress convened emergency hearings 2 weeks after President Caldwell's disclosure. Senator Margaret Dale chaired the committee investigating the Genesis Protocol. The hearing room was packed with journalists, activists, and concerned citizens. General Raymond Cole was the first witness called to testify. Dale began by asking him how many presidents had known about the program. Cole explained that information about Genesis Protocol had been deliberately kept from executive leadership until threats of exposure made disclosure necessary. Dale expressed outrage that unelected military officials had made such decisions without oversight. The hearings became contentious immediately. Representatives from both parties demanded accountability for the program. Some called for criminal charges against scientists who had experimented on unwitting civilians. Others argued that the program had been necessary for national security. The debate split along unexpected lines. Conservatives who typically supported military programs found themselves troubled by government overreach. Liberals who usually advocated for scientific progress worried about consent and exploitation. The political landscape had been scrambled by this revelation. Outside the Capitol building, protests gathered. Some demonstrators demanded rights and protections for enhanced humans. They carried signs reading "Enhanced and Equal" and "Genetic Justice Now." Other protesters viewed enhanced humans as dangerous abominations. They shouted about protecting natural humanity and called for enhanced individuals to be quarantined. Police struggled to keep the opposing groups separated. Minor violence broke out several times when protesters confronted each other. The Enhanced Rights Act was introduced in the House by Representative Carlos Mendez. The bill would classify enhanced humans as a protected minority group under civil rights law. It would prohibit discrimination in employment, housing, and education based on genetic status. The legislation faced immediate opposition from members who argued that enhanced humans already had advantages and did not need special protections. Supporters pointed out that enhanced humans faced unique forms of discrimination and harassment. The debate consumed congressional attention for weeks. Keisha found herself at the center of media attention she never wanted. News trucks camped outside her home. Reporters called her phone constantly requesting interviews. She declined most requests but agreed to speak with Sophie Martinez, who had broken the original story. The interview aired on national television, and millions of people watched Keisha describe her experience. She spoke about the pain of learning her identity was not what she believed. She talked about the fear her children faced from classmates who had been told enhanced humans were dangerous. The interview shifted public opinion significantly. Keisha came across as sympathetic and human. She was not a monster or a threat. She was a mother and a nurse trying to understand what had been done to her. Polls showed that a majority of Americans supported equal rights for enhanced individuals after seeing Keisha speak. However, a significant minority remained opposed. Some religious groups continued to argue that genetic enhancement was immoral. Others worried about enhanced humans using their abilities for criminal purposes or unfair advantage. Danny White became another public face of the enhanced community. After watching President Caldwell's speech, he had decided to be open about his identity. Danny was a firefighter with a record of heroism. 3 months before the Genesis revelation, he had rescued a family from a burning apartment building by lifting a steel beam that would have been impossible for a normal human to move. The rescue had been captured on video. Now that footage was being replayed on news programs as evidence that enhanced abilities could serve the public good. Danny gave interviews, explaining that he had used his strength to save lives without even understanding where it came from. He argued that enhanced humans were not seeking special privileges, but simply the right to live without fear of persecution. His message resonated with many Americans who saw enhanced individuals as potential heroes rather than threats. Danny became a spokesperson for an organization called Enhanced Americans United that formed to advocate for their rights. Not all enhanced individuals were as sympathetic as Keisha and Danny. Federal investigators discovered that several enhanced humans had used their abilities for illegal purposes. A woman named Karen Floyd had been operating as a vigilante in Los Angeles, using enhanced strength and healing to fight criminals. She had seriously injured multiple suspects before police arrested her. Floyd argued that she was serving justice, but prosecutors charged her with assault. Her case raised difficult questions about whether enhanced humans should be allowed to use their abilities in ways that ordinary citizens could not. Another enhanced individual named Greg Palmer had been exploiting his enhanced cognitive abilities for financial fraud. Palmer worked in investment banking and used his superior pattern recognition to insider trade. He made millions of dollars before securities regulators caught him. Palmer's defense attorney argued that using naturally occurring abilities should not be illegal, even if those abilities were artificially created. The court struggled with this novel legal argument. Schools faced challenges when parents learned that some teachers and students were enhanced. Several districts received demands to identify enhanced individuals in their buildings. Education officials refused, citing privacy laws, but the pressure continued. Some parents withdrew their children from schools where enhanced teachers worked. Other parents advocated for enhanced educators, arguing that superior abilities made them better teachers. School boards held contentious meetings trying to develop policies that would protect all students while respecting enhanced rights. The workplace became another battleground. Some employers quietly began discriminating against enhanced job applicants despite the pending legislation. Others actively recruited enhanced workers hoping to gain competitive advantages. Professional sports leagues issued statements that enhanced athletes would not be allowed to compete. The International Olympic Committee debated whether to test for alien genetic markers. Enhanced individuals protested that they should be allowed to use abilities they were born with, even if those abilities were artificially created before their birth. Religious communities remained divided. Some churches welcomed enhanced members and argued that all souls were equal regardless of genetics. Other congregations refused to accept enhanced individuals, claiming they were not fully human. Several denominations split over this issue. New theological schools emerged debating whether enhanced humans could receive sacraments or hold religious authority. The debate sometimes turned ugly, with enhanced individuals facing harassment and even violence from extremist groups. Medical ethics boards grappled with unprecedented questions. Doctors wanted to study enhanced biology to understand how alien DNA functioned in human cells. Many enhanced individuals refused to participate in research, viewing it as a continuation of the exploitation they had already suffered. Some enhanced humans volunteered for studies, hoping their genetics could help develop medical treatments. The National Institutes of Health established guidelines for ethical research with enhanced subjects, but enforcement was difficult. Marcus Turner expanded his legal practice to focus on enhanced rights cases. He was defending dozens of enhanced individuals who faced discrimination in various forms. Turner argued several cases that reached federal appeals courts, establishing important precedents. He secured rulings that enhanced humans could not be fired solely based on genetic status. He won injunctions against local ordinances requiring enhanced individuals to register with police. Turner became one of the most prominent civil rights attorneys in the country. Officer Derek Morrison went to trial for the shooting of Keisha. The prosecution argued that Morrison had used excessive force against an unarmed woman. The defense claimed Morrison had no way of knowing Keisha was enhanced, and her genetics were irrelevant to the case. The jury deliberated for 3 days before convicting Morrison of assault with a deadly weapon. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Many activists felt the sentence was too lenient. Others worried that Morrison had become a scapegoat for larger systemic problems in policing. International tensions increased as other nations demanded access to Genesis Protocol research. China announced they were beginning their own genetic enhancement program, using different alien genetic material they claimed to have recovered from a separate crash. Russia denied having similar technology, but intelligence suggested they were lying. Several European nations formed a coalition opposing genetic enhancement as a violation of human dignity. The United Nations debated a treaty banning genetic modification, but could not reach agreement. Public opinion remained volatile. Polls showed dramatic swings in attitudes toward enhanced humans depending on recent news events. When enhanced individuals performed heroic acts, support increased. When enhanced criminals were arrested, fear grew. The debate dominated social media with people arguing passionately on both sides. Some enhanced individuals retreated from public life hoping to avoid attention. Others embraced their identity and advocated loudly for acceptance. Keisha struggled with her new role as a public figure. She had never wanted fame or attention. Dr. Laura Singh worked at the Arecibo Observatory monitoring deep space radio signals. It was tedious work that rarely produced interesting results. Most signals were cosmic background noise or emissions from known celestial objects. On a Tuesday morning in March, she noticed something unusual in the data from the previous night. A signal pattern appeared that did not match any natural phenomenon she recognized. Singh ran the data through multiple analysis programs. The signal showed clear signs of artificial structure. Singh contacted her supervisor, who reviewed the findings and agreed something anomalous was present. They escalated the report to NASA headquarters. Within hours, the signal analysis was being reviewed by top scientists and military intelligence. The pattern matched technological signatures from the 1952 probe that had crashed in Montana. Something was transmitting using the same basic technology as the alien craft that had provided the Genesis Protocol genetics. The signal was coming from beyond the solar system, but approaching at speeds that suggested advanced propulsion. General Raymond Cole received the classified briefing at the Pentagon. His worst fear was materializing. The aliens who sent the original probe were returning. Cole immediately ordered the activation of all Genesis Protocol subjects. Coded messages went out to the 2,000 enhanced humans across America. They were instructed to report to designated military facilities for briefing and preparation. Some complied immediately. Others were suspicious or frightened. A few refused outright, viewing this as another form of government manipulation. President Caldwell convened an emergency session of the National Security Council. The discussion was tense. Some advisors argued for preparing military defenses. Others insisted that hostile actions would be premature when intentions were unknown. Caldwell asked General Cole about the purpose of the Genesis Protocol subjects. Cole explained that the enhanced humans carried genetic markers that should allow them to communicate with the incoming aliens. They were designed to be translators and intermediaries between species. The signal was analyzed continuously as it drew closer to Earth. Scientists determined it was definitely a spacecraft of some kind. The vessel was massive, easily the size of a small city. It was decelerating from near light speed, using technology that violated known physics. Projections showed it would reach Earth orbit in approximately 6 months. That timeline gave humanity half a year to prepare for the most significant event in history. The revelation about Genesis Protocol suddenly seemed less important than the reality of confirmed alien contact. News of the approaching spacecraft leaked within days. Observatories around the world were tracking the object, and astronomers began sharing information. The media reported that aliens were coming to Earth. Reactions ranged from excitement to terror. Some people celebrated the confirmation of extraterrestrial life. Others panicked and stocked supplies. Religious leaders offered various interpretations. Some saw it as divine revelation, while others called it demonic deception. Governments worldwide struggled to maintain order as speculation ran wild. President Caldwell addressed the nation again. She confirmed that an alien spacecraft was approaching Earth. She explained that the vessel appeared to be connected to the 1952 probe and the Genesis Protocol. Caldwell emphasized that there was no evidence of hostile intent. The spacecraft had been broadcasting peaceful identification signals. She urged calm and promised that the government was preparing for all scenarios. The United Nations announced formation of a unified Earth response team. For the first time in history, humanity was forced to think of itself as a single species, facing something from beyond. Keisha received her activation orders while she was at home with her children. A military officer arrived at her door and explained that she was needed for a critical national security matter. Keisha was reluctant to leave her family, but the officer insisted. She was driven to a secure facility in Colorado, where dozens of other enhanced individuals were gathering. The facility was built into a mountain and heavily guarded. Keisha felt like she was entering a prison. Inside the facility, Keisha met other enhanced humans for the first time. They came from all backgrounds and professions. Danny White was there, along with teachers, engineers, doctors, and artists. Captain Nicole Brooks briefed the group on the situation. She explained that the approaching spacecraft likely belonged to the species that had sent the original probe. The enhanced humans were humanity's best hope for peaceful communication. Their genetic markers should allow them to interface with alien communication systems. Scientists at the facility ran tests on the enhanced subjects. They discovered that the alien DNA in their cells was activating in response to the approaching spacecraft. Neural patterns were changing. New synaptic connections were forming. The enhanced humans reported strange sensations. Many described feeling a pull towards something they could not articulate. Keisha's dreams became more vivid and complex. She saw images of vast civilizations spanning multiple star systems. She felt ancient minds touching her consciousness. Dr. Helen Foster joined the research team studying the enhanced subjects. She worked closely with Keisha and developed a rapport with her. Foster explained that the alien DNA was essentially a biological antenna. It was receiving signals from the approaching spacecraft and preparing the enhanced humans for direct communication. The process was automatic and could not be stopped. Foster assured Keisha that there was no evidence of mind control or manipulation. The enhanced humans retained full autonomy. They were simply gaining new senses. As the spacecraft drew closer, more details became visible through telescopes. The vessel had a geometry that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Its shape seemed to shift depending on viewing angle. The surface appeared to be made of a material that absorbed and reflected light in impossible ways. No propulsion system was visible, yet the craft maneuvered with precision. Scientists struggled to understand the technology. Everything about it defied conventional physics. Governments debated how to respond if the aliens made contact. Some nations wanted to demonstrate military strength. Others advocated for diplomatic overtures. The United States proposed sending a delegation to meet the spacecraft when it arrived. President Caldwell suggested that enhanced humans should be part of that delegation since they were designed for this purpose. The proposal faced opposition from countries that had no enhanced citizens. China and Russia insisted on sending their own representatives. General Cole argued for including Keisha in the contact team. Her case had sparked the public revelation of Genesis Protocol. She had become a symbol of humanity's relationship with alien technology. Cole believed the aliens would appreciate meeting someone who had suffered because of their genetic gift, but chose not to hate them for it. President Caldwell agreed. She asked Keisha if she would volunteer. Keisha said yes, though she was terrified. She felt this was her destiny, even if she did not fully understand it. The contact team assembled over the following months. It included President Caldwell herself along with General Cole, several scientists, diplomats from multiple nations, and 7 enhanced humans including Keisha and Danny. They underwent intensive training in first contact protocols. Psychologists prepared them for the possibility of encountering truly alien minds. Linguists worked with the enhanced subjects to understand how their genetic communication abilities functioned. Everyone understood the stakes. This mission would determine humanity's relationship with the broader universe. As the 6-month deadline approached, tensions rose globally. Some groups predicted the aliens would bring salvation. Others feared invasion and conquest. Conspiracy theories multiplied faster than they could be debunked. Financial markets became volatile as uncertainty about the future made planning impossible. Religious gatherings increased as people sought meaning and comfort. World leaders held unprecedented levels of cooperation, trying to present a united front. 3 weeks before the spacecraft reached orbit, Keisha experienced a breakthrough. During a meditation session recommended by researchers, she felt her consciousness expand beyond her body. She connected directly with the alien ship. Information flooded her mind faster than she could process. She saw the history of an ancient civilization that had spread across the galaxy millions of years ago. They called themselves the Architects. They seeded genetic gifts throughout space, hoping to find other species worthy of joining galactic community. The vision ended after several minutes. Keisha returned to normal awareness, gasping. She immediately told Dr. Foster what she had experienced. Foster was amazed and excited. The communication had worked. Keisha could interact with the aliens. Foster asked what the Architects wanted. Keisha explained that they were coming to evaluate humanity. The 1952 probe was a test. Creating the Genesis Protocol showed humans could use advanced knowledge. Now the Architects wanted to see if humanity had integrated that knowledge wisely. President Caldwell was briefed on Keisha's vision. The implications were clear. The aliens were not coming to conquer or destroy. They were coming to judge whether humans were ready for broader contact. Everything depended on how humanity had treated the enhanced individuals created through alien genetics. The revelation had sparked discrimination. The shuttle approached the alien spacecraft with careful precision. Keisha pressed her face against the window, watching the massive vessel grow larger. The ship's surface rippled like liquid metal, reflecting starlight in colors that had no names in human languages. President Caldwell sat across from her, reviewing notes she had made for the meeting. General Cole checked communications equipment for the 5th time. Everyone was nervous despite months of preparation. This moment would define human history. A docking port opened in the alien hull. The shuttle connected with a soft thud and mechanical hisses. The airlock cycled. Keisha felt her heart pounding so hard she thought others might hear it. The inner door opened, revealing a corridor that seemed to extend infinitely in both directions. The geometry was wrong. Walls curved in ways that hurt to perceive. Lighting came from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The contact team stepped through, holding onto each other for support. A figure appeared at the end of the corridor. It moved toward them with fluid grace. As it came closer, Keisha realized it was not walking but flowing. The being had roughly humanoid shape, but its body seemed to be made of something between flesh and energy. Features shifted as she watched, making it impossible to focus on details. When it spoke, the words came directly into her mind without sound. "Welcome, children of Earth. We are the Architects. You stand aboard our vessel as your ancestors once examined our probe. The circle completes itself." President Caldwell stepped forward with as much dignity as she could manage. She introduced herself and the delegation. The Architect acknowledged each person with a gesture that might have been a bow. When it focused on Keisha and the other enhanced humans, something changed. The being's form stabilized slightly. Recognition passed between them. "You carry our gift within you." The Architect's mental voice seemed pleased. "Your species has proven creative and brave. You took what we offered and used it to enhance your own kind. This is good. This is what we hoped." General Cole found his voice and asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Why did you send the probe to Earth? What is your purpose in coming here now?" The Architect's form rippled. "For millions of years we have traveled the galaxy seeking other minds. The universe is vast and intelligence is rare. We discovered that genetic information can be shared across species barriers. We send probes containing our biology as gifts. Species that accept the gift and use it wisely are invited to join the greater community. Species that reject it or abuse it are left to develop alone. Earth has passed the test." President Caldwell asked what test the Architect meant. The being's response filled their minds with images and concepts. The probe was designed to be found and studied. Any intelligent species would eventually learn to integrate the alien genetics into their own biology. But creating enhanced individuals was only the first step. The real test was how the species treated those enhanced individuals. Did they embrace difference or fear it? Did they protect the vulnerable or exploit them? "We watched your world through the sensors in your enhanced citizens," the Architect explained. "We saw how you kept them secret for many years. We saw the violence that exposed their existence. We watched your debates and your struggles. You are not perfect. You discriminate and fear what is different. But you also fight for justice. You create laws to protect minorities. You argue passionately about right and wrong. This moral struggle proves you are ready." Keisha felt tears on her face. Everything she had suffered had meaning. Being shot, having her identity shattered, becoming a public symbol against her will. It was all part of a test she never knew she was taking. The architects had been watching humanity's reaction to the Genesis revelation. Earth had passed because enough people chose compassion over fear. The architect turned its attention fully to Keisha. You suffered greatly because of our gift. For this we offer regret. Your pain helped save your species, but we did not intend for you to be harmed. You are worthy of honor. Keisha wiped her eyes and asked what would happen now. The architect gestured and the corridor transformed. The walls became transparent, showing the cosmos beyond. Stars stretched in every direction. Some clustered in patterns that suggested artificial construction. The architect explained that thousands of species had joined the galactic community. They shared knowledge and resources. They helped each other grow and evolve. Earth could join them or remain isolated. There was no wrong choice. President Caldwell requested time to consult with world leaders. The architect agreed. It explained that joining the community would mean accepting certain responsibilities. Earth would gain access to advanced technology and medical knowledge. Humans would be able to travel between stars. But Earth would also need to contribute its own unique perspective and resources. The architects did not conquer worlds. They built partnerships between equals. The delegation returned to the shuttle and descended to Earth. President Caldwell immediately contacted leaders from every nation. The United Nations held an emergency session that lasted 3 days. Every country had concerns and questions. Some worried about losing sovereignty. Others feared that alien technology would disrupt economies. Many simply needed time to process the reality that humanity was not alone in the universe. During those 3 days, Keisha returned to Detroit. She wanted to see her children and her mother. She needed to feel normal, even though nothing would ever be normal again. Her children ran to her when she walked through the door. They asked if she had really met aliens. Keisha told them yes, and that the aliens were kind but very strange. Her mother held her for a long time without speaking. Some experiences were beyond words. Marcus Turner visited Keisha at her home. He was preparing for a historic case. Several enhanced individuals were suing the government for damages related to Genesis Protocol. Turner believed they could win and establish important precedents about genetic rights. Keisha agreed to be a plaintiff. She wanted accountability, even though she also understood that the program had ultimately served a greater purpose. Justice and forgiveness could coexist. Officer Derek Morrison reached out to Keisha through his attorney. He wanted to meet with her and apologize personally. Keisha was not sure she could face him. The trauma of being shot still affected her, but she also believed in the power of confronting harm. She agreed to meet Morrison in a supervised setting. A victim advocate was present along with security personnel. Morrison looked broken when he entered the room. Prison had changed him. He sat down across from Keisha and his hands trembled. He said he was sorry more times than she could count. He admitted that fear and prejudice had guided his actions that night. He never meant to kill anyone, but his training and his biases had created a situation where violence became inevitable. Morrison asked for forgiveness but said he would understand if she could not give it. Keisha listened to everything Morrison said. She felt anger and pain, but also something unexpected. She saw him as another human being who had made terrible mistakes. She told Morrison she could not forget what he did. The shooting had shattered her life, but she chose not to let hatred define her future. She could not offer complete forgiveness yet, but she could acknowledge his remorse. That was enough for now. They parted with no resolution, but with a beginning of understanding. The United Nations debate continued. Some nations voted to join the galactic community immediately. Others wanted guarantees about cultural preservation. A few countries rejected contact, entirely arguing that Earth should remain independent. After intense negotiation, a compromise emerged. Earth would enter a trial membership. The architects would share some technology and knowledge. Humans would be allowed to visit other worlds. After 10 years, both sides would evaluate whether full membership made sense. President Caldwell announced the decision at a global address. She explained that humanity was taking its first steps into a larger universe. The journey would be challenging and uncertain. Not everyone would agree with every decision, but Earth was stronger when united. She called for continued cooperation and understanding. She praised the enhanced humans who had made this possible. Keisha, watching from home, felt pride mixed with exhaustion. The Genesis Protocol became the Genesis Foundation. It was restructured as an open program. Adults could volunteer for genetic enhancement after extensive counseling and informed consent. The alien DNA was no longer secret. Scientists studied it openly, publishing findings in journals. Medical applications were developed. Some genetic therapies helped cure diseases. The technology that had been hidden for decades became available to benefit all humanity. Enhanced humans received full citizenship rights in most countries. International agreements protected them from discrimination. Some nations remained hostile, but global pressure pushed toward acceptance. Enhanced individuals like Danny White became public advocates. They helped educate people about genetic diversity and the importance of inclusion. Society adapted slowly but steadily. 3 months after the first contact, Keisha was invited to speak at the United Nations. She stood at the podium looking out at representatives from every nation. She talked about her journey from being shot to meeting aliens. She described the pain of learning her identity was not what she believed, but she also spoke about hope. The classified briefing documents that General Cole provided to President Caldwell contained the complete history of humanity's first encounter with alien technology. In August 1952, a rancher in rural Montana discovered strange metallic debris scattered across his property. The fragments were unlike anything he had seen before, and they seemed to emit a faint glow even in daylight. He contacted local authorities who quickly escalated the report to military intelligence. Within 12 hours, the site was secured and all evidence was transported to a secret facility. The object was clearly not of human origin. Scientists who examined the wreckage determined it was some kind of probe designed for long-distance space travel. The technology was centuries ahead of anything Earth possessed. Most remarkably, the probe contained extensive biological storage systems filled with genetic samples. Thousands of DNA sequences were preserved in a crystalline matrix that kept them stable across what must have been vast stretches of time and space. Analysis revealed that the samples came from dozens of different species from various planetary environments. Researchers spent months trying to understand the purpose of this biological library. Dr. Alan Price, a geneticist working at the facility, made the breakthrough discovery. The alien genetic material could be integrated with human DNA. The sequences were designed to be compatible with carbon-based life forms that shared certain fundamental characteristics with the alien species. Price proposed a theory that the probe was a gift or perhaps a test. Whatever civilization sent it wanted to see if other intelligent species would use the genetic knowledge to enhance themselves. The implications were staggering. Human beings could be fundamentally upgraded using alien biology. Initial experiments with animal subjects showed promising results. Mice with integrated alien DNA displayed enhanced cognitive abilities and lived twice as long as normal. Primates showed increased strength and accelerated healing. By 1955, military leadership was convinced that human trials were necessary. The Cold War was intensifying, and America needed every possible advantage. President Eisenhower authorized the Genesis Protocol after extensive debate with his Security Council. The first human subjects were volunteers from elite military units. Special Forces soldiers who had already proven their loyalty and capability were offered the enhancement as an experimental procedure. Most accepted despite understanding the risks. The integration process was painful and not always successful. 3 of the first 10 subjects died when their bodies rejected the alien DNA. Others suffered severe complications that left them disabled, but 7 subjects survived and demonstrated remarkable abilities. They could heal from injuries in days that would normally require months. Their physical strength increased by 40%. Most surprisingly, they reported sensing things that ordinary humans could not detect. These enhanced soldiers described a feeling they compared to a sixth sense. They could sometimes predict danger before it materialized. In controlled tests, they demonstrated the ability to detect electromagnetic fields and radiation that normal humans could not perceive. Dr. Price theorized that the alien DNA had awakened latent capabilities in human neurology. The enhanced subjects were developing sensory organs that existed in a rudimentary form in all humans, but never functioned. This discovery led to a new understanding of the enhancement's true purpose. The alien genetic sequences were not just about physical improvement. They were communication tools. The enhanced humans carried biological markers that would allow them to potentially interact with the species that sent the probe. If those aliens ever came to Earth, the enhanced subjects could serve as translators or ambassadors. This realization transformed Genesis Protocol from a military enhancement program into preparation for first contact. The goal shifted from creating super soldiers to creating a distributed network of humans who could bridge the gap between species. By the 1970s, the program had evolved significantly. Military volunteers were still being enhanced, but researchers realized that integration worked better when performed on infants. The alien DNA could bond with developing human genetics more successfully than trying to modify adult cellular structure. This led to the civilian component of Genesis Protocol. Families were recruited through classified channels and offered compensation in exchange for allowing their newborn children to be enhanced. Parents were told their children would be healthier and more capable, but were not given full details about the alien origin of the treatment. Keisha Williams was one of approximately 200 infants enhanced during the program's expansion in the late 1990s. Her biological parents had been carefully selected based on genetic compatibility and socioeconomic factors. After enhancement, she was placed with handler parents who would raise her in a normal environment while monitoring her development. The handlers reported to program administrators but had genuine affection for their assigned children. They were instructed to never reveal the truth until activation protocols were triggered. The activation was supposed to occur gradually. On each subject's 30th birthday, they would receive a message asking them to visit a specific location for a medical checkup. At that appointment, the truth would be revealed and they would be given the choice to join the active Genesis network or continue their civilian lives while remaining on standby. The system was designed to be as humane as possible, given the ethical complexities involved. No subject would be forced into service. They would simply be informed of their nature and offered the opportunity to serve a larger purpose. Keisha's shooting had disrupted this careful plan. Her enhanced healing activated early due to extreme trauma. The dormant alien DNA responded to the life-threatening injury by accelerating her cellular regeneration. This emergency response revealed her abilities to civilian observers before she could be properly briefed. General Cole had been forced to tell her the truth years before the scheduled activation. The rushed disclosure explained why Keisha felt so betrayed and confused. She had no time to process the information gradually. The Genesis protocol files also contained extensive research on the alien species that sent the probe. Scientists had analyzed the technological signatures and biological patterns to develop a profile of the creators. They appeared to be an ancient civilization that had achieved interstellar travel millions of years ago. Their biology was radically different from terrestrial life, but still based on carbon chemistry and DNA-like information storage. The probe technology suggested they valued knowledge preservation and careful observation of other species. Most concerning was a notation in the research files about return probability. Dr. Price had calculated that civilizations advanced enough to send biological probes across interstellar space would likely include tracking mechanisms. The probe sent to Earth in 1952 could have been transmitting location data back to its creators. If that was true, then whoever sent it might eventually come looking for it. The Genesis protocol was not just preparing for the possibility of alien contact, but for the probability of it. Somewhere in the galaxy, beings existed who knew about Earth and who might one day decide to visit. This context helped explain the urgency General Cole felt about keeping the program secret. If hostile nations learned about the alien technology, they might try to steal it or create their own enhancement programs. International competition could lead to genetic arms races that would destabilize human society. Worse still, if the original aliens did return to find Earth in chaos, they might judge humanity as unworthy of the gift they had provided. The enhanced humans were meant to demonstrate that Earth could use alien knowledge responsibly. President Caldwell had read all of this history and understood the weight of decisions facing her. The Genesis Protocol represented both humanity's greatest achievement and its most profound ethical failure. Creating enhanced humans without their consent was wrong, even if the motives were defensible. Yet dismantling the program could leave Earth vulnerable if extraterrestrial contact occurred. She faced an impossible choice between transparency and security. In the end, she chose transparency because she believed that humanity deserved to know the truth about itself, even if that truth was difficult and strange. The files Cole provided included population maps showing where all 2,000 enhanced subjects currently lived. They were distributed throughout every state in America, working in various professions. Some had become doctors, teachers, and emergency responders. Others worked in technology, agriculture, and manufacturing. A few had joined law enforcement and military service without knowing their true nature. Each one represented a potential point of contact between human and alien civilization. Each one carried genetic secrets that could reshape understanding of what it meant to be human. The shuttle approached the alien spacecraft with careful precision. Keisha pressed her face against the window, watching the massive vessel grow larger. The ship's surface rippled like liquid metal, reflecting starlight in colors that had no names in human languages. President Caldwell sat across from her, reviewing notes she had made for the meeting. General Cole checked communications equipment for the 5th time. Everyone was nervous despite months of preparation. This moment would define human history. A docking port opened in the alien hull. The shuttle connected with a soft thud and mechanical hisses. The airlock cycled. Keisha felt her heart pounding so hard she thought others might hear it. The inner door opened, revealing a corridor that seemed to extend infinitely in both directions. The geometry was wrong. Walls curved in ways that hurt to perceive. Lighting came from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The contact team stepped through, holding on to each other for support. A figure appeared at the end of the corridor. It moved toward them with fluid grace. As it came closer, Keisha realized it was not walking but flowing. The being had roughly humanoid shape, but its body seemed to be made of something between flesh and energy. Features shifted as she watched, making it impossible to focus on details. When it spoke, the words came directly into her mind without sound. "Welcome, children of Earth. We are the architects. You stand aboard our vessel as your ancestors once examined our probe. The circle completes itself." President Caldwell stepped forward with as much dignity as she could manage. She introduced herself and the delegation. The architect acknowledged each person with a gesture that might have been a bow. When it focused on Keisha and the other enhanced humans, something changed. The being's form stabilized slightly. Recognition passed between them. "You carry our gift within you." The architect's mental voice seemed pleased. "Your species has proven creative and brave. You took what we offered and used it to enhance your own kind. This is good. This is what we hoped." General Cole found his voice and asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Why did you send the probe to Earth? What is your purpose in coming here now?" The architect's form rippled. "For millions of years we have traveled the galaxy seeking other minds. The universe is vast, and intelligence is rare. We discovered that genetic information can be shared across species barriers. We send probes containing our biology as gifts. Species that accept the gift and use it wisely are invited to join the greater community. Species that reject it or abuse it are left to develop alone. Earth has passed the test." President Caldwell asked what test the architect meant. The being's response filled their minds with images and concepts. The probe was designed to be found and studied. Any intelligent species would eventually learn to integrate the alien genetics into their own biology. But creating enhanced individuals was only the first step. The real test was how the species treated those enhanced individuals. Did they embrace difference or fear it? Did they protect the vulnerable or exploit them? "We watched your world through the sensors in your enhanced citizens," the architect explained. "We saw how you kept them secret for many years. We saw the violence that exposed their existence. We watched your debates and your struggles. You are not perfect. You discriminate and fear what is different. But you also fight for justice. You create laws to protect minorities. You argue passionately about right and wrong. This moral struggle proves you are ready." Keisha felt tears on her face. Everything she had suffered had meaning. Being shot, having her identity shattered, becoming a public symbol against her will. It was all part of a test she never knew she was taking. The architects had been watching humanity's reaction to the Genesis revelation. Earth had passed because enough people chose compassion over fear. The architect turned its attention fully to Keisha. "You suffered greatly because of our gift. For this we offer regret. Your pain helped save your species, but we did not intend for you to be harmed. You are worthy of honor." Keisha wiped her eyes and asked what would happen now. The architect gestured and the corridor transformed. The walls became transparent, showing the cosmos beyond. Stars stretched in every direction, some clustered in patterns that suggested artificial construction. The architect explained that thousands of species had joined the galactic community. They shared knowledge and resources. They helped each other grow and evolve. Earth could join them or remain isolated. There was no wrong choice. President Caldwell requested time to consult with world leaders. The architect agreed. It explained that joining the community would mean accepting certain responsibilities. Earth would gain access to advanced technology and medical knowledge. Humans would be able to travel between stars, but Earth would also need to contribute its own unique perspective and resources. The architects did not conquer worlds. They built partnerships between equals. The delegation returned to the shuttle and descended to Earth. President Caldwell immediately contacted leaders from every nation. The United Nations held an emergency session that lasted 3 days. Every country had concerns and questions. Some worried about losing sovereignty. Others feared that alien technology would disrupt economies. Many simply needed time to process the reality that humanity was not alone in the universe. During those 3 days, Keisha returned to Detroit. She wanted to see her children and her mother. She needed to feel normal even though nothing would ever be normal again. Her children ran to her when she walked through the door. They asked if she had really met aliens. Keisha told them yes, and that the aliens were kind but very strange. Her mother held her for a long time without speaking. Some experiences were beyond words. Marcus Turner visited Keisha at her home. He was preparing for a historic case. Several enhanced individuals were suing the government for damages related to Genesis Protocol. Turner believed they could win and establish important precedents about genetic rights. Keisha agreed to be a plaintiff. She wanted accountability, even though she also understood that the program had ultimately served a greater purpose. Justice and forgiveness could coexist. Officer Derek Morrison reached out to Keisha through his attorney. He wanted to meet with her and apologize personally. Keisha was not sure she could face him. The trauma of being shot still affected her. But she also believed in the power of confronting harm. She agreed to meet Morrison in a supervised setting. A victim advocate was present along with security personnel. Morrison looked broken when he entered the room. Prison had changed him. He sat down across from Keisha and his hands trembled. He said he was sorry more times than she could count. He admitted that fear and prejudice had guided his actions that night. He never meant to kill anyone, but his training and his biases had created a situation where violence became inevitable. Morrison asked for forgiveness but said he would understand if she could not give it. Keisha listened to everything Morrison said. She felt anger and pain, but also something unexpected. She saw him as another human being who had made terrible mistakes. She told Morrison she could not forget what he did. The shooting had shattered her life. But she chose not to let hatred define her future. She could not offer complete forgiveness yet, but she could acknowledge his remorse. That was enough for now. They parted with no resolution, but with a beginning of understanding. The United Nations debate continued. Some nations voted to join the galactic community immediately. Others wanted guarantees about cultural preservation. A few countries rejected contact entirely, arguing that Earth should remain independent. After intense negotiation, a compromise emerged. Earth would enter a trial membership. The architects would share some technology and knowledge. Humans would be allowed to visit other worlds. After 10 years, both sides would evaluate whether full membership made sense. President Caldwell announced the decision at a global address. She explained that humanity was taking its first steps into a larger universe. The journey would be challenging and uncertain. Not everyone would agree with every decision. But Earth was stronger when united. She called for continued cooperation and understanding. She praised the enhanced humans who had made this possible. Keisha, watching from home, felt pride mixed with exhaustion. The Genesis Protocol became the Genesis Foundation. It was restructured as an open program. Adults could volunteer for genetic enhancement after extensive counseling and informed consent. The alien DNA was no longer secret. Scientists studied it openly, publishing findings in journals. Medical applications were developed. Some genetic therapies helped cure diseases. The technology that had been hidden for decades became available to benefit all humanity. Enhanced humans received full citizenship rights in most countries. International agreements protected them from discrimination. Some nations remained hostile, but global pressure pushed toward acceptance. Enhanced individuals like Danny White became public advocates. They helped educate people about genetic diversity and the importance of inclusion. Society adapted slowly but steadily. 3 months after the first contact, Keisha was invited to speak at the United Nations. She stood at the podium looking out at representatives from every nation. She talked about her journey from being shot to meeting aliens. She described the pain of learning her identity was not what she believed. But she also spoke about hope.